Welcome back to Adventures with Dice. This is Rob, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about quick prepping a fantasy game. Because it's happened to all of us who are game masters, dungeon masters, referees, whatever you want to call it. You've had a busy week, you meant to get around to prepping the game and getting stuff ready for game night, and stuff just happened, life happened, and you didn't get around to doing it. And hey, everybody's coming over in a few hours and you got to get stuff ready. Now, again, this is just, a way to do it. This isn't the only way to do it. And I'm not going to limit it to a specific type or rule set. This could be DCC, it could be D&D, it could be white box, it could be basic fantasy, any kind of fantasy game. And you can do this same thing with other genres like, sci-fi and whatever. But I'm going to focus on fantasy right here today because I got my wizard hat on. So anyway, the idea here, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can grab a module, especially if it's DCC. You can grab a module. Those things are usually less than 20 pages. Read through it and be ready to go in an hour or so. But what if you don't want to run a module, or if you just need something as a filler night in the game? So if you don't want to run a module, or you don't have anything prepared, any ideas, and you're just drawing a blank, what I'm going to present here is just a way to, go about throwing something together real fast. And I have done this before, and it usually works great. Most of the time, the players have no idea that's what you did. So the first thing you need to do is you need to consider breaking the adventure down. Like, what do you need your players to do? Let's say you get, you're going to play for 4 hours tonight, or 6 hours, or whatever you're going to play for. If you have a game night that goes 6 hours every week, I envy you, because I get about 4 hours out of mine, which 3 of which is usually play, and about an hour of us just talking. But anyway, so you have basic parts to the adventure. You need a hook, right? You need a quest for them to go on. You need to decide how much travel you want to have between wherever their home base is and where the quest is going to lead them, where it's going to take place. And for this example, we will look at, let's say I have a group that I want to spend the night sending them on a quest to, several miles away through some wilderness to some ruins of a dungeon, and go in and populate that dungeon with stuff, and just have a good night of dungeon crawling, hack and slash. Okay? That's pretty simple. It's pretty basic. And it's pretty much the base formula for D&D, at least back in the old days. We didn't all go to magical colleges and things like that, so whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some products here that I like and don't like, and tell you a little bit about what you can do with them and what I think of them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for a quest, right? And I am a fan of Matt David's books, and he puts out these quests. He puts out a lot of books, but I have several of these quests. I have these and sci-fi ones. And in these quest books, he has them broken down into types of quests. Dungeon hooks, royal quest, forest quest, doorways to another world, town quest, sea quest, questing beast, quest objects, lost cities. And the idea is that each one, just you can roll on it randomly, or it has hooks or whatever. And I tend to just kind of read through them until I see something that piques my interest. But in this case, I would go to the dungeon quest, and I would be like, okay, let's see. Innkeeper is offering a reward for any who will explore a tunnel recently uncovered in his basement. Tunnel leads to a dungeon. That could be kind of neat. It doesn't really send them out of the city either. They stay in the city in that one. But, there's a lot of them that you can choose from. And these books are also generally pretty cheap. They're like, I don't know, $7, $10, something like that. They're not expensive at all. and he has a ton of them. I really like them, and I've used it quite a bit to get inspiration from. But the idea behind a book like this, and there are other people who put these kind of books out too, and I'm sure there's random generators you can find online, but I like physical things. But you can take these quests out of these books. You can sit and flip through and go, okay, well, I like this one. It's going to send them, several miles through a swamp to get to the ruin, these new ruins that were found. And it's they think there's a bunch of monsters in there and needs to be cleared out, and somebody's going to pay them for it or whatever. So you get your hook, your quest idea from something like this, which usually takes a few minutes. He also has, this is another one of his books that I really like. This is the terrain guide, and it covers a whole bunch of different, scenario. It has scenario ideas, possible encounters, possible NPCs, bonus random tables, and it covers just a bunch of different types of terrain. And I've done a video review, a look at the book on this before, but it covers wetlands, forest, mountains. There's weather table, encounter tables. And it's really good for just thinking about, okay, well, I have my players going through this swamp. Let's look at the wetlands here, and let's look at things that they may have to deal with in the swamp, like getting lost or dealing with bugs. And then you have also possible NPCs and a swamp that's made up here called the Swamp of the Lost. You can use stuff like that out of this. So that gives you something that you could, if you're not pressed for time and you want to do an encounter or two in a swamp, having them adventure through before they get to the ruins. Books like this are great for that. Here's one that I picked up. Dungeon Maps, Details, Traps, and Puzzles for Game Masters. This is absolute garbage. It's like $7 on Amazon. I don't even know who did this. Tabletop RPG Resources. But I'd like my money back because this is it is $7 on Amazon, but I was not impressed at all. The room descriptions are really horrid. It's like they just pulled crap off the internet, stuck it in a book. The trap ideas is like, hey, here's an idea for a trap, but no idea on how this trap would work. Like, okay, well, that's really stupid. I was very unimpressed with this book. I just don't like it at all. And then the maps it gives you in the back, it's like, oh yeah, those are cool maps, but every one of them are so dark that you can't really write any notations on them at all. So this one in particular, I highly don't recommend. Do not like this book. I will probably donate this or trade it at my second-hand Charles used bookstore. I don't like it. But I know that they're getting a quest. They're going through the swamp. They're going to get to a dungeon. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. There are plenty of generate the dungeon online programs and stuff. I'm not very good with those. I also like I said, I like books. I like tangible things. And I think I got this one for $5, $5 or $6 maybe on Amazon. It's Dungeon Maps 5e, and it is 120 unique maps. And the first thing that I will do is I will show you each page is laid out like this. And it's, got its own little grid. But every one of them is colored like this. And they're just blank dungeons. And each one is different. And I really like this book. I understand you can print them online and do your own thing or just draw your own, but this just saves you time from drawing your own. But I like that it is got all this white negative space on it, and there's plenty of room to write notations in the room that the players are in. I'm actually using this in one of my games now, and there's plenty of room outside of it to write notes about the dungeon. Everything I needed ended up on just the one page, which I just photocopied the page on my printer. I just scanned it and printed it out and wrote on that one. Didn't even mess up the one in the book. And for the price, you can't beat it. I want to say it's $5, might have been $10, but it's no more than that. And it's pretty cheap. And especially, it gives you 120 dungeons, and each one of them is different. So I do recommend this. I will say, however, as a caveat here, the Dungeon Maps 5e is a money grab title, right? Because there is nothing about this 5e except that it has dungeons in it. It has nothing to do with 5e. There are no rules in this. In fact, the table of contents assumes that you're going to draw on and plan out each dungeon in here, so it is left blank for you. If this is the Dungeon of the Goblin King, number 7, so you go to number 7 and fill in that's the Dungeon of the Goblin King. There's literally no text in the book. It's just dungeons, which is what I wanted, and I wanted to be able to write in the dungeons things that I wanted. I mean, they've got, sometimes there's like flooded areas and stuff like that, but I wanted to be able to make my own notations in there, and that's great. But as far as it being 5e, the only thing this has in combination with 5e is sometimes in D&D you explore dungeons, and this has dungeons in it. That's really the only connection. I'm 100% positive they put 5e on here just to grab the attention of people who are newer players to D&D and only play 5th edition stuff, and thinking that they would grab this because they think it's a 5th edition book. This is any edition, any fantasy game, period, that you wanted to play with it. Outside of that, I can't really complain. I do like the book. I found it very useful. I really enjoy the maps and the way they're done in here. And I found it very much a time saver, because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I like this map. I'm going to use this one. Scanned it and just started filling it in. So I have my quest. I have my encounter in the swamp. Maybe they'll meet some trolls or something, or some monsters of some type that aren't trolls and going to kill them. And then they'll get to the dungeon, which I already have planned out here. Now, you don't want, the thing is, there's no text in there because you want to be able to design the decor of the dungeon the way you want to do it. And that's where these next books come in. And both of these, I think, were cheap. Well, one of these was cheap. I think this one, I have the Fantasy Tome of List, which I believe was around $10, something like that. And it's not bad. It's got just, and that's literally all it is. There's no artwork. It's just tons and tons of lists. It is, Lord, how many pages is this thing? It is 302 pages of list. And I can try to tell you, like, that's the index for the list. I'm obviously not going to read all of that, but it's got everything from dungeon decor, fantasy NPCs. It's got giant names, different types of giants, hirelings. There's airships and air combat. There are rangers. There are riddles, and just it is literally just tons and tons of lists. So if you want something that's not flashy, but it's going to give you a lot of lists to pull stuff from. And I use this mainly for, well, actually, I did use it for a festival, for naming a festival. And I've used it for some dungeon dressing stuff so far. But, for like $10, it's not a bad buy. I find something like that pretty easy to use. This one I think was around 20, and I have a video up on this one. Honestly, you can't go wrong with Matt Finch, and that is the Tome of Adventure Design. This is another book that weighs in, let's see, let me get past the ads here. Let's see, this one, 307 pages. And there's not a lot of art in it, which is fine, because you don't need a lot of art in these books. But it is a lot of different lists, but it's put together in such a great way. Go look at the book video on it. I go into a little more detail on it there. But it goes into adventure design, general principles, locations, missions, the villain's plan, concluding remarks, list of tables, and it's list, but it's also kind of commentary on how to use list, how to use each one of these different books, which apparently these were all separate books and then put together as one. But how to use the list to come up with unique structures, more complex villains than, he's a bad guy just because he's a bad guy. Giving them reasons and plans. This book helps you do that in a way that the Fantasy Tome of List doesn't. Fantasy Tome of List is literally just list. This is a lot more thought-provoking and a lot more detailed. And if I had to choose between the two of them, even with the price increase with this one, I would get the Tome of Adventure Design by Matt Finch. He's really smart. He's really creative guy, and I really like that. I would use this primarily in this scenario that we're talking about to dress out my dungeon, all the different things that they can find in the rooms, all the furniture that would be in there, what it smells like. That's something a lot of people always forget. And then, and it even has, how to randomly stock with monsters, and you just pull from whatever monster you're using from fantasy. So, really, in about an hour or two, you could have a fairly good size adventure prepped. You pick your, go through and pick you a adventure hook to get them going. Then you have an encounter on the way in the wilderness somewhere. Maybe it's not a swamp. Maybe you want to do it. They're going through the mountains. But they have some type of encounter there, and then you get them to the dungeon. You got dungeons to pull from. Boom, and then you take that dungeon and like the Tome of Adventure Design, and start filling the rooms up with stuff. And you've got a fun night of adventure, maybe two, depending on how slow your players move through the story. And again, this is not an all-encompassing, this is the way to do it. This is simply just a way to throw an adventure together without a lot of forethought about it, and a way to do it with certain products. Obviously, you could sit and just go, I have an idea, I'm going to write that down, that's a good hook, and I'm going to design some encounters, I'm going to take some graph paper and draw a dungeon. You can do all of that for free, basically. Sure. Not denying that at all. But if you like collecting books, which I do, and you want to get some use out of them, this is a way that you can get some use out of these type of books by throwing adventures together when those nights come up that you're not prepared and don't have anything going on up here, and you're needing to run a game. So that was my thought process behind this, was just to kind of put that out there, because I do get asked about adventure design from time to time by people, and this is not my go-to way to design an adventure, because I like for my stories to have an overarching theme, but it is a way to throw something together if I'm not prepared that night and I need to have something ready to go. So what is your advice on ways to throw quick games together, aside from just reading a module, because we can all do that? But if you have advice different from mine, that or books you recommend that people use to put games together, put them down in the comments below. Let's discuss it. Also, like, share, subscribe. All the YouTube jazz helps the videos get out there. There are ways to contact me through Rob's Game Group on Facebook, in the comments, or not in the description of the video. Plus my Amazon wish list is in there if you want to help the channel out. And until next time, my friends, good gaming and good luck.